to the Wildline Podcast. I'm your host, Dan. This is a podcast about movies and how much money they make at the box office. Another weekend down the drain. That's a terrible turn of phrase. Another weekend has passed. We're going to do a little bit of a weekend review on what happened this weekend at the box office. A couple of big openers, but a lot of holdovers this weekend. But still super interesting weekends. Like, it wasn't that boring. There's a lot of interesting stories going on, so we will cover that. As always, if you guys listen to the podcast, whatever, feel free to reach out. I'm most responsive to SoundCloud, probably. So if you have a message, subscribe or follow on SoundCloud and shoot me a message, or maybe even YouTube. I never check my YouTube, but I might start. In any event, let's get down to it. A big summer weekend. It should be exciting with fireworks and stuff, but I guess that's next weekend. But it's the summer movie season. It should be exciting, right? And it has been to some degree. It's been a relatively quiet June compared to Junes of yore. Does that make sense? Junes of yore? I think that does make sense. Past Junes, like we're in the thick of the summer movie season. I didn't realize this until I started looking at it because I'm just a nerd and I spend hours looking at Box Office Mojo. I had always assumed that the summer movie season, like when I was growing up in the 90s, was June to September. But looking back on it, it seems like May took off a lot earlier than I thought it did. Like way back in the 90s, I think May started to take off as a big month, and the summer movie season has just shifted earlier and earlier to the point where there's still a summer movie season, but it kind of starts. There's like little windows of it in March, and even like January this year with like split. When I say like summer movie season, I mean like big movies coming out, big blockbusters. The one that sticks out to me the last couple of years, March has been a huge, massive month. But I guess it's always been that way. But it feels a lot different recently with Beauty and the Beast. And what else came out? March last year was Batman vs. Superman. That feels like a big kickoff month nowadays. And even last year with, was that last year? It feels a long time ago, with Deadpool. That came out in February, and like Valentine's Day is now a big sort of holiday for movies. So things are constantly changing. But the summer movie season has overall shifted earlier. It's shifted pretty much away from August. August and September are now graveyards. Like the first weekend or first 2 weekends in August, you might be able to lump in with the summer movie season just because it is technically summer. A lot of kids are still off school, so that's like a big deal. August is a huge vacation month. It's massive in Europe. Like people just take off all of August in Europe. I think that's what I hear. In the United States, it's also a big vacation month. So you're going to assume there's going to be a lot of people going to the movies. They're just not. It's not like a July, and it's not like a June or May. It's very different. So August is no longer sort of the summer movie season, especially the last 2 weekends when people are returning to work, going back to school. It's just very quiet all the way through October, essentially. So we are right in the heart of the current summer movie season. So we have the typical blockbuster coming out. We have Transformers: The Last Night, and so which Transformers is this? I can't even remember. I looked this up earlier and I have not seen a Transformers movie all the way through, and that's not me being a hipster douche. That's just me liking good quality films, and I'm not going to sit through trash. And I could tell that the Transformers movies were trash from the start. Series started in the summer. They always open in the summer. It's always in the 2-week period, like the last couple of weeks of June or early July. Transformers, the original, came out in July 3rd, July 4th weekend of 2007. Feels like it came out a lot longer ago. Like the series has been going on for like 15, 20 years. That's what it feels like. Of course, this is Michael Bay. This is his trademark series. Sadly, it is his trademark series. I've grown to really enjoy some of his filmmaking. Pearl Harbor has been on TV a lot recently. I think we need to revisit that critically, that film. I think it's a little bit better than the naysayers like me said it was back when it came out. And anyway, I saw it in a theater, and I was very upset when I saw it because I was like, this is trash filmmaking. But now when you go back and look at it, there's something there. He has something to his work that I might even say has artistic value. But the Transformers movies, for the most part, are completely throwaway, popcorn, trash action movies. Huge blockbusters meant to make a lot of money. Event films that you're supposed to see in the theater. It's all about making money, essentially. These are very clearly streamlined products and have been since the start of the series back about exactly 10 years ago. So yeah, Transformers 1 come out in 2007. Only does 70 million. But one thing about this series is they have really good multipliers, which is surprising for a blockbuster. Does well over a 3x multiplier. That the opening was probably depressed because it was on the holiday weekend, and sometimes holidays actually take away from opening weekends rather than add. It ended up with a 4.5 multiplier. I wonder if it opened up, if that's really the opening weekend or if that was like a Tuesday. Okay, it opened up, I guess it opened up on a Monday. No, it was Wednesday the 4th when it officially opened up. I don't really know how they're counting that opening weekend, but in any event, it technically opened at 70 and it had a really great multiplier. But this has been sort of a pattern with these films. Transformers Revenge of the Fallen came out in June 2009. Opened up at 108. You would expect that if the original did 319 and opened at 70, that the second one would have a massive, huge increase in its opening weekend. That didn't happen, but the multiplier stayed over 4. Like, it ended up with $402 million that summer, the summer of 2009. And so this, at the end of the day, this series is just it prints money. They put out another one in June 2011. I don't remember the last two. June 2011 was Dark of the Moon. I do remember that cool trailer. It had a really cool trailer. Open sub 100, 97. Again, ends at 352. It's just, there's something about these films where maybe people don't go and rush and see them in the first couple of days, but they end up seeing it in the upcoming like month. Those numbers are really surprising to me. Like the opening weekend seemed pretty depressed from a huge, massive blockbuster, but the gross is in line with a massive comic book movie that opens at $150 million. These are opening at 60% of that. In any event, Dark of the Moon came out 2011, ended up at 352, really great. Off from the series high of Revenge of the Fallen, which did 400 million. So this is when it starts to taper off a bit. 3 years ago, they put out Age of Extinction. Is it the one with the dinosaurs in it? Opened at 100, good opening for this series. Only ended at 245, so a pretty low multiplier on that one. And that's when you see the series start to really slip. And so that brings us to Transformers: The Last Knight. I could not tell you anything about this film. I've seen the trailer probably 6 or 7 times. It's been on, I don't know, like every film that's out, it's been up. The trailer is ridiculous. It's stupid. Anthony Hopkins voices it. It's just, I don't know, it's so trashy. But you know, they decided to come back for more, despite the fact the last movie did not do very well. And this new one is, I want to say, massively underperforming. Now, it's not a huge flop, right? So it opened this in the middle of the week. Its 5-day gross is going to be $69 million is the current estimate. The weekend gross is going to be 45. That's clearly way below. It's below even the original one that came out 10 years ago, and that's not even adjusted for inflation. Adjusted for inflation, the original, of course, Box Office Mojo falls apart when I try and do that. In any event, The Last Knight is underperforming pretty significantly. Now, early estimates said it was going to be even worse than this. Early estimates said it was going to open at 63 for the 5-day, but it's been bumped up a bit, and it's sort of like the Transformers MO. Not a huge amount of buzz, but people just end up going and seeing it for whatever reason. And it looks like that might be the case with this one, but to a lesser extent than normal. I have no idea where this is going to end up. It's at 45 for the weekend, 69 for the 5-day. I don't know, like let's say ballpark 2.4x multiplier domestically on that 69 opener. You're looking at 165. That's not good. Like if this thing does sub 200 million domestically, I think the series is over. Someone was saying, well, online I brought this point up, and someone's like, well, like internationally it's gonna like crush it, and like that's probably true. It's already at $265 million worldwide, but the breakdown is 74% of that is international. And keep in mind, studios make less money on international releases. 40%. They usually get 50% in the United States, 40% on average internationally, and only 25% in China, because China, for whatever reason, their government has a stranglehold on the box office, and the distributors get a lot more money there, or the theater owners, or somebody gets a bigger cut. So even if a movie does great in China, it has to essentially do double the amount of business in order to make the same amount of money it would have made here in the States. So I don't know if this one's going to get bailed out by the international audiences. I don't know. I get the feeling that this was probably kind of like Pirates. It's like the series has been around for a long time. It's gotten really old and people are kind of sick of it. The fact, if this thing does under 200, I mean, I don't want to say it's a loss or like anything like that for the studio. I think Paramount's going to make money. I guess the production budget was 217 million. That's gonna, you're talking about, for a super wide release like this worldwide, costs are usually triple its production budget, especially when you're talking north of 150 million. So you're talking like $600 million just to release this thing, and that's on all platforms and all regions. I'm talking like streaming, digital TV, all that kind of stuff. So it's gonna be a struggle to get that money back, I think. But I have no idea if it's gonna be a push or a loss or whatever. I can tell you this though, it's not gonna be a massive profit. Whatever. It's not gonna be a massive. Paramount's not gonna make a ton of money off it at the end of the day, right? Profit wise, you want to hope for, on a movie like this, $200 million, you want to get a profit. That's not going to happen here. It's just not going to happen. So their ROI is kind of off, and Paramount is already in massive trouble. I believe Apple tried to buy Paramount along with Sony earlier this year. I think Paramount might be donezo, like dead in the water. They might be one of the first huge studios to go, with everything changing over in the industry. I've talked about this a lot on the podcast, but at some point, the Netflix, Amazon, people streaming movies, staying at home will have a huge effect on the industry, and big companies will go out of business. And Paramount feels like it could be the first one to go. Obviously, some of the massive companies are going to be fine, like Disney and Warner Brothers, but the smaller studios are going to struggle. And I think Paramount might be the first domino to fall there. And Transformers last night, it started the canary in the coal mine for them. Like they needed this to do, over for the 5-day, it needed to do at least 90. I would hope for, if I were them, well over 100 for the 5-day, and it's not even close. But anyway, it does come in number 1 this weekend, so I mean that's something to celebrate at Paramount. So Transformers number 1, number 2 this weekend was Cars 3 in its second weekend. It's just about to cross the $100 million mark domestically here. It did 25.175 million this weekend on 4,250 screens. Per theater average is just about $6,000. The story here in Cars 3 is that it's not performing. It's performing okay, but it's certainly not performing up to what the series has done before. And if you look at Cars 2 did $211 million overall. The original Cars did 244, or technically 329 adjusted for inflation, which I'm becoming. I used to never adjust money for inflation, but now I've become obsessed with it. So I'm gonna try and always adjust older box office numbers for inflation, because that's the real true take of that film. Because if you say $200 million and it's 10 years ago, it doesn't make any sense, right? It'd be like, I don't know what it would be, but it would be significantly more than $200 in real dollars. So Cars 3 is just not doing well. I can tell you why it's not doing well, or I can tell you a sign that it's not doing well. Or in its second weekend, it's making 25 million. It's a 53% drop, right? It didn't lose any theaters. A 53% drop is normal for like a comedy, an adult comedy. It's normal for like a big film that isn't a children's film. A children's film dropping 53% on its second weekend is bad, like really bad. I would expected like low 40s. You're gonna probably want to be in the high 30s too if you want this thing to really last for a long time. So that's, I don't know what its multiplier is going to be. You would assume as a children's film that its multiplier would be well over 3, which is higher than normal. It opened at 53 last weekend. A 3x multiplier would put it at 159. I don't think it's gonna, it'll probably, okay, I'm not gonna get crazy. Let's just assume it does a 3 multiplier, which is pretty low for a children's film, especially a massive one like Cars. That'll put it, like at least 50, 60 million off Cars 2 total, adjusted for inflation, of course. So it's bad news here. It's not a flop. I'm not going to call it a flop, but it's certainly just like Transformers. And we're kind of seeing a pattern this year. These big movie franchise sequels are just not pulling in the money. Pirates being the other big example of that. You have your winners, of course, your Guardians of the Galaxy, your Wonder Woman, that really hit it home. But keep in mind, both in the same company, both Marvel, both Disney, right? Or actually, sorry, Wonder Woman is DCU, but both big comic book movies. And the traditional bigger blockbusters just are not performing at all. The Mummy's another big example of that, but we'll get to that in a bit. So Cars 3 just not doing well. I guess maybe people are tired of the series. Critics gave it a 66% on Rotten Tomatoes. The audience said 76%, which is pretty low. So I think there's a quality problem here. I think at the end of the day, people are just like, well, why would you make this movie? Like, there's no reason to make it except just to cash in. And, just in general, people are becoming, I know this is a children's film, but parents are becoming more savvy, and people in general are becoming more savvy to just being marketed to and being treated like a commodity, and they don't like it, right? And I think there's maybe a little reaction to that with Cars 3. It's like, oh, you just want to take my money here and waste my time. And so this is going to be the last of the series. There's no way Cars 4 is not going to happen now. We're seeing like the death of all of these series. I feel like Transformers, maybe if International saves it, but I don't see another Transformers movie ever happening. Thank God. At least as part of this Michael Bay series. Of course, they're going to reboot it in like 5 years, but that's something different. The Pirates series is over. And I'm not like sad about any of these series of movies. I don't really like any of them. The original Pirates is pretty cool, but after that, it just got so lame. And that's, let's take a big step back and get out of the numbers a bit. Like, so you get these huge franchises just sort of not performing as expected. That's a big deal in the industry because they count on these movies financially to do very well, and they're not. And I think it's all part of this big shift we're seeing in the industry, which makes it really exciting to cover, but it kind of makes it suck to work on these big films expecting to get $100-200 million in profit, and it's not going to happen. The accountants are not going to be very happy about that. So people are going to lose their jobs. But that's just the nature of this business and how it works. I said Cars 3, disappointing second weekend without a doubt. Despicable Me is coming out. When is it? Is it next week? I have to double check real quick. So yeah, the 30th. So it's this weekend. So Cars 3 is gonna have trouble here because that's gonna really suck up a lot of the air in the children's movie world. So Cars 3 is just not gonna hang on there for very long. Poor performance, I think, overall. Disney will not be happy with that. On the opposite end of the spectrum in terms of performance, Wonder Woman was number 3 this weekend. Identical take to Cars 3, 25 million bucks. A great 40% drop. Theater count dropped below 4,000. It's in its 4th weekend, and its per theater average is still at 6,400. That's great. Its total take so far is $318 million. Really surprising. I talked about this one at length. This is the story of the summer for a lot of reasons, but I think I've covered a lot of those reasons before about the female director, female lead in comic movie, kind of a really cool moment in film. But I think the bigger story, just from a numbers analyst perspective, is the legs on this film. Right? Like, it opened only at 103. It's already over a 3x multiplier. Like, that's insane for a comic book movie. You compare that to the other DCU movies that had, like, Batman vs Superman had a sub 2x multiplier. What a disaster. God, that was so bad. I'll do a little showdown because Box Office Mojo kindly enough does like a showdown of the daily box office for DCU at this moment, and it's, I guess, fourth weekend. Wonder Woman's at 318. Suicide Squad was only at 283 now, right? So it's blasted past Suicide Squad. Batman vs Superman was only at 311, so it just passed Batman vs Superman. And Man of Steel is only 271. Like, I think we have to take a step back and look. Wonder Woman is the number 1 DCU movie, right? Like, if you exclude the Batman stuff, which I think you should, by Nolan, the Nolan's part of the series, because it didn't really start till Man of Steel, the DCU stuff. So Wonder Woman is the best performing DCU movie of all time up to this point. And that's a big deal because nobody thought that was going to happen. I think even the most optimistic fanboys were like, oh yeah, it'll probably do like what Suicide Squad did, or it might do a little bit less than Man of Steel or whatever. It's just really surprised. And I think at the end of the day, it's about quality. Rotten Tomato score is over 90. It's 92% from critics. And people love the movie. It's got a 91% rating for audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. That's great. And so DCU, it sounds like they made a really good comic book movie that just happened to have a female as the lead. And people responded really well to it. And I don't know, it seemed kind of a fresh take. Based on the movies that were coming out recently, there just wasn't anything really exciting for that group of people. Besides Guardians, and Guardians came out, 2 months ago now. And so Wonder Woman was able to take up that sort of that open space in the comic book world, at least the box office, and really take advantage of it. And really, it's a home run. It's a massive, massive home run for Warner Brothers, DCU, and everybody involved with the Wonder Woman film. And I think it's just going to stick around for a while because there's nothing coming out that I can see is going to really take that audience. Baby Driver, Despicable Me 3, and The House are coming up. None of those are really going to maybe Baby Driver. I will talk about Baby Driver later. I don't know how well it's going to do, but I think it's wide open until Spider-Man Homecoming comes out July 7th. I don't know why it's come out the 7th. It should come out July 4th or during the holiday. Sony's just has their head up their ass. I don't know what they're thinking. But that's besides the point. Wonder Woman's got a clear runway for the next couple of weeks, and it's going to rake in more money. I don't know where it's going to end. It's already way past the best projections it was going to have. Way past them. We'll just see how high it can go. It'll be exciting to watch. So that was number 3. Another huge surprise was number 4 this weekend, 47 Meters Down. this shark movie about two girls go cage diving with a shark. The rope breaks and they're stuck in the water with the shark. Whatever, you get it. It's like The Shallows, but I guess they're underwater most of the time. I'm not going to go any deeper than that. It came out on VOD last year, and I think they decided to cash in on how well The Shallows did. People love shark movies. It made $7.4 million this weekend. This is like a B movie. Like, I don't even think this should be in theaters, but it's working. And this is like, it blows my mind that it came out on VOD already. Like, you have like a viewed basically a straight to DVD film was like, or straight to video was the old term. Now it's straight to VOD, which is just like, it's like a second class, second tier movie. Right, it's not made by a huge film company. It's independent, essentially. The fact that it did $7.4 million on its second weekend, it dropped only 33% for a horror film. I mean, it's essentially a horror film, right, or a thriller. That's insanely good. That's fantastic. And it added 200 theaters. It doesn't make any sense to me how this is doing so well. Its per theater average this weekend was $3,000. It's made $24.2 million in the theater. I mean, compare that to what it did probably in VOD. I have no idea. Just a really strange phenomenon. And this is I think the most interesting thing that has happened this week. Oh, there's other stuff too, but this is, I can't compute it because the trailers were cool. I saw the trailers, but I could tell from the trailer that like, this isn't a normal big budget film. Like, this is like an indie film, and like an indie film thriller with a shark. Like, it's like, how well can you do that on like $5 million or like $2 million? They probably shot this for, but they hit something. They hit a bullseye essentially, and I kind of wonder, and I talked about this last podcast. Is this like a new distribution model? Like, you throw it on VOD, see what the reaction is, and then put it out into theaters? And it just seems so random to me and so backwards. And I wonder why that is. Is it just because they're cashing in on the Shallow stuff? Apparently, they produced this film before Shallows had even started, or started production on this film before the Shallows did. So like, yeah, maybe they're not definitely cashing in, but they're certainly cashing in on the success of the Shallows releasing this film. And I don't know, like, did it perform so well on VOD that they're like, oh, we got to push this out in theaters? That doesn't seem very likely to me. So this seems like a cash grab that just went really well. And I wonder if a cash grab goes well, there's going to be copycats. So we'll see if we're going to see more straight to VOD movies coming out in theaters. We'll see. But 47 meters down, great. 7.4 million this weekend, coming at number 4. Number 5, All Eyes on Me, the Tupac biopic. Wow, 5.8 million. A 78% drop without losing any theaters. That has to be a record for one of the worst drops ever for a wide release. It's certainly the worst wide release drop I've seen in a long time that I can remember. Its total take so far is a pretty good 38.6 million. It was shot for next to nothing in it, but it's Lionsgate. I don't think they threw a ton of money into marketing. A lot of it was probably social media marketing, which is cheaper. And just a lot of word of mouth buzz and hype. This is like the story last weekend for a while, but then it popped off Thursday night and Friday, and then like quickly dissipated, and it has continued that tailspin downwards into its second weekend. I'll have to look and see if there's a bigger drop that I can remember, or that I can see. 78% drop on its second weekend, and again, no theaters lost. It just goes to show you there was a very specific market for this film. They all went to go see it opening weekend, and there's nobody left. And so this thing will disappear from theaters within a month. You won't be able to see it. So that's number 5, All Eyes on Me. Number 6 was The Mummy, also with a terrible drop, 60% drop, 5.8 million this weekend. The 60% drop makes sense because it lost 1,000 theaters. Its per theater average is just shy of 2,000. This is a $125 million Tom Cruise huge action budget movie. Well, it's 125 is not massive, but it's obviously pretty big. Total gross so far at 68. This is going to be, and I think Deadline did a whole thing on it. It's going to lose 90 million, they said. Production budget was pretty low though. That seems a little bit of a high loss that they're coming up with. And I didn't read the whole article, or if I did, I can't remember what their points were. But the story in The Mummy was it was supposed to launch the monster universe, Monsterverse, Dark World, or something. What was it called? Dark Universe? I don't know what it's called. It was a film universe with the universal monsters like Frankenstein, The Mummy, Werewolf, all that kind of stuff. And this was the sort of the first film of that series was supposed to be. And it really kind of came out of the gate and tripped and fell flat on its face. And I don't know what the status of the rest of the movies are, but this performance probably indicates to Universal that their announcement of that movie universe may have been premature. And they probably should have waited to see how this first one did before they, slated in 5 more films. There's not a ton to say about The Mummy. It does go to show you that like this is the type of movie that would have done very, very well 10 years ago, 15 years ago, but especially like 20 to 15 years ago. This is like the bread and butter of the summer movie box office. And movies like this just aren't performing well anymore. And it's just the wind change, it's the industry is changing so much and so rapidly that these sure bets, what used to be a sure bet, Tom Cruise in a huge action film about an IP that has been around for hundreds upon hundreds of years that everybody knows, The Mummy, right? You would expect it to do well, but like look back at like King Arthur, I think it was called King Arthur, whatever it was, the Guy Ritchie movie. Earlier this year, which is probably one of the biggest flops of the last few years. That'll lose well over 100 million, probably 150, $200 million loss. Those traditional IP films with the old stories and the old legends we all know, they're not clicking with people. Even with someone like Tom Cruise, who's still pretty much an A-list movie star, he couldn't get this one to get any fire. There's no hype behind it. And his performance is pretty pitiful. So we'll see what Universal's going to do with the whole monster universe thing, Monsterverse. But my guess is they're going to start pulling back on it, or if not cancel a lot of those films, but at least trim down the production budgets to maybe like half or something like that if they want to make money. So The Mummy was number 6. Number 7 this weekend was Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Men Tell No Tales. This sort of fits in with our theme of these big franchise movies performing very poorly. 40% drop. It's at 160 now, and its 5th weekend. Interested to see what it's doing internationally. Wow. $677 million total worldwide. 76% of that coming from international. So it's obviously a huge international play. But the production budget on this was over 300 million. It's listed at 230, but all the rumors say it's over 300 million. One of the most expensive films ever made. This is just there's not much to say. Like, this is the death of that series, and I think the Transformers movie is the death of that series as well. Good riddance, I'll say. There was no need for another Pirates movie. Nobody was asking for it, but Disney decided to just go ahead and try and cash in, and I think they're gonna sort of take a decent sized loss on that. I think, unless those international numbers can prop it up and help it break even or make a small profit, but I don't know. It's just the costs on that movie were just way too high. So that was number 7 this weekend. Number 8 was Rough Night. This is the bachelorette party comedy from Sony with Scarlett Johansson. I always call her Scarlett Johansson. In the lead, I guess. There's a lot of leads in this. Terrible performance, just awful. Sitting at did 4.7 this weekend, 40% drop, not terrible. But it's oh my god, its per theater average is $1,500 in its second weekend. That is just not anywhere near you want to be for something like this. Rated R comedies are out of style, and it's going to take a new crop of filmmakers to come in and make the next Old School or Wedding Crashers or The Hangover again, because the whole genre is so tired and nobody's going to see these movies. Total performance so far for Rough Night is 16.6 million in its second weekend. It should have opened at 20. Like, there's no reason a movie like this with this backing, with that cast, doesn't open at 20. It doesn't make any sense, especially in summer. Just awful performance overall. That was number 8 this weekend. Number 9 was Captain Underpants. Nice 40% drop, 4.2 million. Per theater average is sitting at about 1,800. A nice $65 million take. That's nothing to scoff at. And its 4th weekend. It's performing very well. Nice low drops like you want for a children's film. Unlike Cars 3 that dropped 53% this weekend. Number 10 was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. $3 million even. 41% drop. Lost 345 theaters. It's been in the theaters for 2 months. So it's starting to sort of wind down its run. But you can't complain. Per theater average is over 2,000 in its 8th weekend. That's what you want to see. That's the definition of long legs. Total gross so far is 380 million. I kind of wonder where Wonder Woman Lovely is going to end up compared to this film, because Guardians opened up so much higher. Was it like 150 or something like that? Something crazy. We'll see if Wonder Woman has better legs than Guardians. Obviously, it's going to have better legs, but I wonder if it could catch up. That would be crazy if it did. It probably won't, but we'll see. Guardians is a huge win for Disney. They're going to do a volume 3, obviously. Everybody loves the series. Everybody loves Chris Pratt. It's sort of like the future of the comic book movie genre is in movies like this. Number 11 this weekend. This one confuses the fuck out of me. Beatriz at Dinner. This is the very strange art house flick that has been all over the TV. I mean, the marketing on this was basically incessant. It's being released by Roadside Attractions, kind of a smaller distributor. Salma Hayek plays the lead. You have John Lithgow, Jay Duplass, the mumblecore guy. He's in everything. It just doesn't make any sense. Like, this is an independent film. It feels super indie. It feels like it's like 1995. You'd see it at like the Art House Theater or something like that. For some reason, it's in its 3rd weekend, and they pushed it wide. It was limited for the last 2 weekends. It does $1.8 million. Who is going to see this movie? Like, I love art movies. Like, I will see most anything and probably get something out of it. Beatriz at Dinner looked like one of the most uncomfortable movies you could possibly go and see. It's essentially about a dinner party, and that's it. And it seemed really awkward, and everything about it seemed like overly political. It seemed like the type of movie that rich white people in Santa Monica would love to watch. It in so much as like it just has this very insulated limousine liberal kind of feel to it. And like, I got nothing wrong with those people. Like, they're good people. They have like their politics, but there's a certain smugness to that, and this movie feels like was just stewing in that smugness. And but you know, I say all this, and it is doing a lot better than I thought it would. I'm not sure why they pushed it out wide, but hey, like $3,700 per theater is not that bad. It sounds like they pushed it out to every single art house theater in the United States and Canada, at like basically 500 theaters. Now, is it going to expand more? Probably not. They're kind of squeezing as much out of the orange as they can right now. Interesting strategy, really interesting strategy, because the marketing was just incessant on this. I wonder if, and it seems like it paid off to some degree. I wonder if financially it's going to pay off. I wonder if making $1.8 million this weekend, and probably a lot less next weekend, especially if they don't expand, is really going to offset those marketing costs. I have no idea. I have no clue. And such a weird film to release in the middle of summer too. Has Oscar bait written all over it. But really fascinating, super fascinating. And I kind of want to watch this one and see how it does. Like I did last fall and winter when all those limited release films were coming out and then expanding wide. I think in Manchester by the Sea, something like Miss Sloane. Some of them were really successful, or like Moonlight, I talked about pretty much incessantly or constantly last winter and fall all the way through the Oscars. You know, it's a fascinating world of limited release in the art house film world. Like they don't make a lot of money. And it's cool to see how they try and get as much as they can out of those films because they have a limited audience. Beatriz at Dinner is not ever going to be a super wide release film. They're not going to push it out to over, 2,000 screens or 3,000 screens or 4,000 screens like a Transformers. It's just not going to happen. It'd be a waste of money. But it's cool to see how they try and get it out to as many people as they possibly can and try and make some money off it. I don't know what the end goal is. Like these movies don't make money, right? Like usually these are made to win awards, and that increases the prestige of the studio, and that in turn allows them to do, it's almost like a branding, it's almost like a marketing expense. Like you make these high prestige films and it increases or betters your brand as a company, right? You don't make any money off those. They're there to just make you look good, and looking good allows you to do bigger films in theory. I wonder what the business plan behind this movie was. Who knows? I have no idea. But it is an interesting film to talk about and look at. We're going to continue to look at it over the next few weeks, see how it does. I do wonder if they're going to expand it more. I guess I don't know. Maybe they will. At 400 screens, $3,700 is not great. But it's certainly not like, I think Miss Sloane did like less than 1,000 when it went wide. So it's better than that. But that also disappeared like the next week after that. In any event, so that was number 11. I'm going to keep going. Baywatch was number 12, 1.4 million. Super low percent drop here. Only 9%. That doesn't make any sense. Who knows what's going on there? Lost 800 screens. Per theater average is an okay 3,000. It's made $56 million so far. I talked about this being a big flop. It is a huge flop. It should have done well over, they probably wanted over 100. But it seems to be making up a little bit money on the back end here. So it's been sticking around for a while. So it's not a total train wreck, but it's definitely still a flop. Number 13 was Megan Levy. This is the Kate Mara, feels like a Christian movie about a dog and her marine, about a marine and her dog. 1.2 million, decent 52% drop. Total takes 10.7 million. That was a huge, massive social media push for this movie. It's on Twitter constantly. It's like the only thing. Every time I opened up Twitter, this freaking ad would be on there. So I don't know if 10.7 million is going to cut it for them. I think they wanted to go probably 20, 30-ish range. Another weird one, The Book of Henry by Focus Features. This is the director of Jurassic World and the new Star Wars movie. Did about 1 million this weekend, 34% drop, added 67 screens. It's only like 700 or 650 screens. So kind of a limited release. 1450 is its per theater average, which is not great in its second weekend. I heard this is the worst movie of the year. The reactions to this have been very visceral. I think because of the prestige and stature of the director. But keep in mind, before Jurassic World, he only did one indie flick. So it's not like he's Spielberg or something like that. So I don't know about that criticism, but the movie seems incredibly weird. There's also a massive social media push on this. Like every time I'd open Twitter, it was Megan Levy, like the video automatically plays without sound, or it was Book of Henry. I must have seen the Book of Henry ad like 100 times by now. Did not make me want to see the movie, I'll tell you that much. So that was number 14. At number 15, It Comes at Night, $800,000. About a 69% drop. Lost 1,600 theaters. Per theater averages below the Mendoza line at just about $998 to be exact. Total take so far for It Comes at Night, $13 million. This was the seemingly, well, it was looked marketed as a horror film by A24. But it turns out it's not a horror film. It's a thriller. There's almost no really I don't think there's any supernatural elements to it. People were super pissed. Got a terrible cinema score, one of the worst ones of the last few years, because people felt gypped and they felt tricked, and people do not like that. And so you can see, you know, there's no reason why this movie doesn't do well over $30 million at the box office. Like, it should have opened at $13 million instead of having that after 3 weeks. They screwed it up. A24 really they screwed it up really bad. Because it looked like an awesome film. I was super excited about it. I don't even want to see it now because of what I've heard. I'm going to see it, but like, I'm not that excited anymore because I thought like it seemed like a really cool, like weird, like what comes at night, you know, like apparently nothing. Apparently it's just like I don't know, like they just made up that title and it has nothing to do with the actual film, which is just a very, very poor choice by them. And then sort of to round it out, like what else is going on here? The box office. I guess the other two big stories are limited releases. The Big Sick. This is supposed to be like the movie of the year, like the romantic comedy of the year. Judd Apatow produced. You know, it did really well at Sundance. I think Amazon Studios bought it up. They've been all over marketing about this thing constantly. And it just opened limited. Probably looks like New York and Los Angeles. It did $435,000. Doesn't really mean much. What really means, the key here is the per theater average. And I read an article today that was like, oh, this is amazing. Then I looked at the per theater average, it was 87,000. And when you compare that to like a mass wide release opening, yeah, that sounds like unbelievably good. But when you think about it in terms of limited releases, it's actually not great. You know, anything over the 50,000 range is pretty good for a super limited release. But I actually expected this one to go a little bit higher. And just to give you an idea of what is a really good opening weekend per theater average, I'll kind of give you some examples here from some limited releases. There's something like Grand Budapest Hotel opened on 4 theaters, did 202,000 per theater, well over double this movie. La La Land last year opened in I guess it was last year, December, opened in 5 theaters, just like this movie, $176,000 per theater, right? Like well over double as well. The Master did $147K per theater. American Hustle did $123 per K. Steve Jobs did $130K per theater. Moonrise Kingdom did $130 as well. So, you know, it's good, but it's not great. I mean, even Moonlight did $100K per theater. It's okay. So The Big Sick has basically the same per theater opening average as Spring Breakers. That came out in March of 2013, which is one of, I want to say, an American classic film. If you've not seen Spring Breakers, it is not for the faint of heart. It is very strange and odd. I think it's a masterpiece. Big Short did about 88K per theater, so it's in that range, right? Lincoln did about 85K. You know, Lincoln went on to make $182 million. Spring Breakers went on to make $14 million. So where's The Big Sick gonna sit on that spectrum? Well, it's probably gonna do better than Spring Breakers, which did 14. Is it gonna do Big Short numbers at $70 million domestic? Maybe. I don't know. It doesn't feel like it though. It feels like, is it gonna be like Trainwreck and like be the breakout rated R? I'm assuming it's rated R. Comedy of the year or the summer. It says not yet rated on MPAA. That's bullshit. That's got to be R. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. The buzz on this was just so constant and in my ear since Sundance. And it looks interesting. It doesn't really look that innovative. It kind of reminds me of like Annie Hall, or maybe even kind of like a Knocked Up style. Definitely reminds me of Trainwrecked as well. I don't know. I don't know if it's really going to click outside of the major cities. In fact, I don't think that it is. So I would expect it to make probably below Big Short numbers, maybe like 30s for this. I'm trying to think like if there's like another perfect example of this one on the best per theater averages. There's really not, because it's mostly these high per theater averages are for super arty flicks that come out for the Oscars in like October through December. Like Inside Llewyn Davis did 101,000 per theater its opening weekend, but only ended up at 13 million. I think it's going to go higher than that. I think it's probably like from the Blue Jasmine range, probably like 30 to 40 million, I think, overall, which would be good. I don't know. You know what sucks about this movie? It's gotten super good reviews. I think on Rotten Tomatoes, I got to check it out. 97% Rotten Tomatoes. 97%. That isn't awesome. 87% from the audiences, so definitely lower than you would expect. It just doesn't, I don't know. It doesn't really have, I don't know. It seems a little too homey, if that makes sense, like a little too quiet, and it feels like a small film based on the trailers. It doesn't have a pop to it, if that makes sense. It seems like a really good film, romantic kind of comedy drama that will connect with a very specific set of people. I'm thinking people who live in big cities, like Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, places like that, who are in their 20s, maybe early 30s. And I think that's the audience. I don't think there's much of an audience outside of that, which is why I don't think it's going to do like 80 million. I think it's going to do like between 30 and 40 million, somewhere in that range. This one will be interesting to see Oscar-wise what happens. Or, you know, fuck it. It could break out. It could just be this huge thing. And just become the movie. Is this like the new like Knocked Up? Is this the new Superbad, the new Wedding Crashers? Is this the revitalization of the rated R comedy, which I have called dead earlier in this podcast? My gut says no. But I do think it's going to perform very well. And I think it's probably one of the better films to be released this year. And I expect to see it near the Oscars, or come up with the Oscars, especially in terms of like writing and acting. But I wanted to call that one out. And then the other one is The Beguiled, the Sofia Coppola film. Did decently well, opened at $60K per theater, only in 4 theaters, super small, New York, Los Angeles, typical. Toll take so far is $250,000. I don't know what she's doing. You know, like, I don't want to get into the art criticism part of movies and like this. She feels kind of lost to me. She had a super great start to her career, right? She had I'm trying to like go back and see. Oh man, what a great start to her career. Virgin Suicides is one of my favorite movies. Came out in 2000. It is so good. Great novel. I think the movie is actually better. No, it's always hard to judge. Like, the book is so good, but it's one of my favorite movies. Incredibly well done, adaptation of that book. And that was 2000. Then she did Lost in Translation in 2003, which is just considered a classic now, an instant classic film with Bill Murray, revitalized his whole persona and career. And then Sophia kind of goes off on a tangent with Marie Antoinette. Just didn't do very well. Big flop. Only 3 years after Lost in Translation. Just did not connect. And she comes out 4 years later with Somewhere. And I saw that in the theater, and it was probably, I'm going to go ahead and say, is the worst movie I've ever seen in the theater. I've seen probably worse films on TV or at home or whatever. It was the worst movie I've ever seen that I paid money for. It was just awful. It was the most boring thing I've ever seen. It was naive. The writing was poor. The acting was actually very good. I'll give you that. Like, the acting was great, but the conceptualization and the story were just trash. It was not good at all. And she's not recovered. The Bling Ring came out 4 years ago. Nobody saw that movie. Why would you? It was also not very good. And The Beguiled just seems like a very strange tangent to go on. It's a remake of a 70s movie, I think. It just it looked super odd. And I was like, why would you do this? Whatever. It's the luxury of being Francis Ford Coppola's daughter and having no one ever say no to you, probably, in the industry. Well, I don't want to, that sounds like really condescending or whatever, mean, maybe even a little sexist, but there's clearly nobody sort of guiding her here. Like, these are poor movie choices. They're poor products. She hasn't made a great movie since Lost in Translation, which is 14 years ago. So I hope she can find her way. Lost in Translation, Virgin Suicides are classic films. Like, she made classic films. And to see her kind of go off the edge into Nowheresville, hopefully she can find her way back. She kind of reminds me a little of Wes Anderson, who did find his way back. Because he went on those weird tangents. They weren't necessarily terrible movies. Darjeeling Limited is a terrible movie. But he found his way back. It was slow at first. Like, Fantastic Mr. Fox was like better. And then Moonrise Kingdom was good. And then Grand Budapest was great. Like, he found his way back to greatness. And I hope Sofia can do that as well. That's all I got for this week. Really interesting weekend. What we got coming up on Wednesday, Baby Driver's coming out. I might actually go see that because it looks pretty cool. That's the Edgar Wright film. Is anybody else going to go see it? Probably not. Like, he can't catch a break. He's a great, interesting filmmaker who's made some real classics, but like, I just don't. No one's going to go see this movie. I could be totally wrong, but I'm not. No one's going to see it. Despicable Me, although they are pushing it out wide. So it's a Sony movie. They're pushing it out to over 3,000 screens on a Wednesday. Well, we'll see how it does, but I don't think it's going to do very well. Despicable Me comes out on Friday. A huge, massive release. 4,350 screens? That's nuts. The House is coming out as well. Based on what I've seen on social media, The House is not going to do very well. They just have marketed it very poorly. Then after they got Spider-Man, we go into July, and it's kind of an odd rest of the summer. Spider-Man comes out. I think it's going to do okay. I think it's not going to be a massive opening. The quality looks pretty good, so it might have good legs, better than a normal comic movie, but it's not going to have the legs of like Wonder Woman. If it breaks the $100 million opening, I think that would be really good for Spider-Man. But looking back at the series, it's like, is that really something to be excited about? $100 million for this movie? It's Spider-Man. Captain America opens at like 160 or whatever. So that's opening up. I think it's going to do okay. Then the rest of July is pretty, it's kind of, it's not a wasteland. It's just not a lot of interesting films coming out. You got War of Planet of the Apes, July 14th. Wish Upon, which I think is a super small horror film. War for the Planet of the Apes seems incredibly boring. I don't know why they keep making those movies. Apparently they do okay. This one's going to be probably the death of the series. This year is the year where all these series are coming to an end. Probably the most interesting film is Dunkirk, coming out July 21st. Christopher Nolan about World War II. I don't think it's going to do that well. Well, it does kind of seem like a 4-quad movie. And my parents want to go see it and they talk about it, so that's a big deal. They're in their 60s. But I don't think it's going to do massive numbers. Girls Trip, I don't know what that is, but I think actually that might do well, Girls Trip, relatively for a comedy. Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets. I think everybody in the entire box office nerd world already assumes this is a huge flop, and will be a huge loss for STX and Europa, who are putting it out. That's like the common wisdom already. I don't think we're going to be wrong on that. And then around out July, you have Atomic Blonde and the Emoji Movie. The Emoji Movie is like Angry Birds. I honestly don't even want to talk about it, but I will. Atomic Blonde, Charlize Theron is playing a character way too young for her. Like, I don't get what she's doing. I can't buy that she's like a femme fatale or whatever. She's not like 25 anymore. That also sounds sexist. She's an asshole. But it doesn't seem to fit. You know, it's like whatever. There's some buzz with Atomic Blonde. It could do well. Maybe kind of like a John Wick audience on that one, but I don't know. You're getting into like the August period where things start to really slow down. And then you got Dark Tower in August. And we're like looking at, there's like not, besides Spider-Man, Planet of the Apes is going to be pretty big. There's not a really massive film until, oh man, there's just like nothing. I think the one I'm really looking forward to see what it does is the Hitman's Bodyguard comes out on my birthday, August 18th. So we'll see how that does. It's got a really interesting vibe to it with Samuel L. Jackson and Ryan Reynolds. Besides that, pretty quiet for the rest of the summer. After Spider-Man and Planet of the Apes, it really quiets down until probably the fall. You have smaller big movies coming out like The Dark Knight. And then I think the big opening will be probably what the fuck is it? It coming out September 8th. I think that's going to be massive. Anyway, I probably got on too long. Whatever. Thanks for listening, guys. This has been the Wildland Podcast. I will be back next week. Have a good one.